to me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. Welcome to I Do Fitness podcast. This is my mom.
Hey, everybody. Shout out to Zion, Illinois.
Oh my gosh. No, but we've been looking really forward to this podcast. We've been in the works for a while now. And we have great news. And a lot of people are going to like this because it's literally about boundaries, about how much weight my mom's lost. And sorry about my voice, but I lost my voice a little bit. But we're making it come back. So we're going to make it work because she's leaving tomorrow to go back home. And so, Mom, you lost 107 pounds.
Yes.
So tell me where you started at, how much you were.
368.
So you were at 368.
And I've never told anything like this before.
No, this is good. How much? So where are you at right now? Weight-wise?
Weight-wise?
Mm-hmm.
I am at 261.
261. So you've lost a total of
Is that right?
107 pounds?
Mm-hmm.
Pardon my math if you're a quick mather, but pretty close, plus or
Yes.
minus 3 pounds.
Yes.
What did you do? How did you do it? Because it took you how long?
It took me about a year and a half, maybe a little more.
Yeah.
And had to change a lot of my eating habits. Had to go down on some medications, especially prednisone. I quit eating bread so much. I was a big bread eater. Eat a lot more chicken and vegetables and fruits, water. I literally just watch everything, things that I didn't even know.
What are some of the things you didn't even know that were like, man, this is bothered me?
I want to say the bread part. The bread part.
Just because you're a big bread fan, you like to eat bread a lot.
Yeah.
And we're talking a lot about a lot of bread here. We're not talking about
right. It was
a small amount.
Right. And it was too much. Like I would crave the bread. Another thing is sweets. I'm a big sweet eater.
Yeah.
So I have had to really, really watch it. It was hard at first, but once you get used to it, you really don't miss a lot of it. Do I eat it sometimes? Yeah. But I don't go overboard.
Yeah.
I don't go overboard. Before I could just like eat a couple candy bars a day, drink pop, whatever, and that'd be fine instead of eating real food.
Yeah.
And it's really, really important that you eat something every few hours.
Yeah. And so one of the big reasons why I wanted to talk to my mom on the podcast was because, yeah, she changed her food habits, but the major thing that she changed the most was her boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And so knowing that you get that comfort food that you usually get from sweets and
Yes.
bread, what kind of boundaries did you put up? Because we talk a lot about this. Because you were raised specifically for your mom told you your kids were everything.
Right.
And so I'm her son here telling her that should not be the case.
Yes.
That
my kids come first.
Yep.
Before anything.
Mm-hmm.
Before my husband, anything.
Yep.
And so I live my life.
And your
just
mom,
you kids.
And your mom did the same thing.
Yes.
So we're
the
fighting
same exact thing.
not only generational sin here, but
right.
This is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And how old are you now?
I am 58.
So 58. She's 58 years old. She's putting up boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
She's really attacking of how to live her life better.
Yes.
So
to put myself first.
Yeah. Which sounds very weird for somebody who's a mom probably out there listening to the podcast. Mm-hmm. Is why would I put myself first? So how would you explain that to somebody to have that mental shift?
It's very important because what I didn't realize as a mom raising you kids, putting you guys first of everything, putting you before my health, before doing things like anything, like buying myself stuff, clothes, shoes, just anything. I put you guys first and then I would do without. Well, then you got this wore out mom that isn't doing anything but just raising her kids. And then you fall into that, you get depressed, anxiety, but you keep going because you think that's how it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to put my kids first, everything, no matter what. And that's just how I lived my entire life, raising you kids, you know.
So before you got married, how much did you weigh?
135.
So she weighed 135 pounds. You went to 300 and what?
68.
68 pounds.
I could barely walk or function, as you know.
Yep.
I literally thought I wasn't going to live that long. And a lot of meds. And
What type of meds were you on? Just so that way because a lot of people, because I've been a coach for almost 15 years now.
Right.
And so I see the same medications that people are on. So talk a little bit about some of the medication you're on so that way you get some relatability to the audience.
High doses of prednisone, as high as 60 milligrams. I have not been off prednisone since 2015, which wreaked havoc not only on my physical appearance, but my mental health. Antidepressants, because they said there was a pain reliever in there that would help the rheumatoid arthritis and psoriatic arthritis. That also puts a lot of weight on you. I wish I would have known to do more research on that before I did any of this, but I didn't know. You know, having these 2 autoimmune diseases, you do not know what to do. So you're doing all this medicine.
Tell them what autoimmune diseases you have.
I have rheumatoid arthritis and psoriatic arthritis. And it's been one heck of a road. I'm fighting my way back, which I never thought I would. Yeah. You know? I remember one time you came home when you first seen me in the worst state ever, and you said, Mom, if you do not do something, if you do not take charge of your health, you're going to die.
Yeah.
And you were right. You were absolutely right.
Really was probably one of the toughest conversations I've had to have, but I know I had to have it.
Yes.
I was actually delaying that for a while.
Yes. I was heartbreaking. You remember I was crying.
Yeah, you were very upset.
Yeah. And you know, as many as my friends know that have seen me and family have seen me, if you hadn't seen me in those years and you ran into me, you wouldn't know that was me.
Yep.
It was that bad. And I'm very, very thankful for family and friends that loved me through it and has encouraged me on this journey.
Yeah.
You know, you find out who your real friends are and how real your family is too, and how much they love you.
Yeah.
You know. So, and I've had your dad to encourage me through this whole year and a half. Like, you know, whatever you got to do, honey, let's do it. Yeah. So that's been a big factor for me too, to have somebody, you know, in my corner.
It's very hard not to do it. I mean, just from coaching now, is if you don't have a supportive spouse on that journey, it's very, it's extremely tough.
Yeah. And Dad has been my number one supportive there at home. You know, it's just me and him. We're empty nesters, and it's very important for your spouse to take your health for real.
Yeah.
I mean, because if he didn't, you know, I could have lost my life with this. And I really felt like I was dying at one point.
Yeah.
You know that.
No, yeah. I thought when I first walked in and I seen you at your heaviest weight,
yes,
I was like, this is not good.
I had no neck. My head was so swollen and just everything. Yeah, just like they said, okay, like what my dad told me. My father also had rheumatoid arthritis. And he told me prednisone, how did he put it? I'm trying to think. He said prednisone is a miracle worker, but it's also the devil. And man, have I found that to be right, because I've been on this prednisone, high doses, since 2015. A lot of my close friends and family know that. So now we're into 2023. And one day I just woke up and I think the lower I kept, and mind you, I started taking myself down on that prednisone because nobody would listen to me. So I started doing it myself. And then when my doctors figured out, hey, she's really going to do this, then we better tell her how to keep going and be careful, because once you get down to 10 milligrams, it can get really hairy. You get horrible side effects. So I've been through a lot with that. At one point it got so bad, I think I was at 8 milligrams, and I was like, almost like thinking to myself, what am I doing? Because my body was fighting against that prednisone, like telling me, like, you need it, the pain, all that stuff. And I just hung in there. And now I'm down to 1 milligram.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I didn't know that.
yeah. So since 2015, I'm at 1 milligram. And I really believe, too, that once I got past 7 milligrams, I don't know what it was, but my mind started working better. My mental health, I started thinking better.
So you had like
feeling
brain
better.
fog or something?
Yes, very bad brain fog. Sometimes couldn't remember things, get agitated for no reason. That's part of it. And of course, the bloating up, the moon face, I had that all. So also too, I wouldn't go hardly anywhere. I was kind of a prisoner in my own home. And I know a lot of people don't understand that, but I just felt like I looked like a monster. It was hard on me. So,
Like, what do you mean? Like, just because of the way you looked?
yes, the way I looked. And now I get how Papa Don felt, because when he first started really blowing up, he goes, honey, I look terrible. I don't look like myself. And I would encourage him, no, you look handsome, you're fine. But now I know that feeling, how he felt, So I was really very, very picky where I went. And because I didn't want people to see me.
Yeah.
It was so hard because, people can be cruel, unfortunately. And if they don't know your backstory, what you're going through, they just simply think, oh, she got fat and blah, 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 But I'm the kind of person, as you know, is I'm not going to explain my whole story, It's like, why bother, Because I know the people that really, truly cared,
Yeah.
So that was a big change for me, and just being able to go somewhere now and feel okay. I mean, I have a long ways to go still. I do have a goal weight that I want to get at, and I've talked to my cousin about it, and she said, "Oh my gosh, it's so great," and I am doing it on my own. So it's been hard, very hard. I mean, I tried to. I'm gonna be honest. I tried one weight loss center thing. I stuck to it for 2 weeks because it was like a tester thing, that you do, but I couldn't do it. And it was making my hands swell and all that. Well, come to find out, all that is processed food. And I cannot do a lot of that stuff. I can't. Another thing I've been staying away from is dairy. The only thing I eat is like Greek yogurt. Otherwise, I switch to almond milk. Now, I know everybody has their own whatever, but for me, it's working for me. People are saying like, what, when they see me, what are you doing? I change a little bit at a time. Take this away, take that away. Let's go down on this. My thing was that high sugar too. So much sugar. If I was sad, I needed sugar. If I was happy, I needed sugar. When you're that high on prednisone, it really affects you. Because you get kind of I don't care feeling, because what's the use?
Right.
And now I can, and remember I told you I got to a point that I couldn't even concentrate to read, and I love to read. Do you remember me telling you that?
Yeah.
I couldn't even concentrate to read my books, and that just killed me, And it killed me not to be able to do things with you kids and Dad and
Take the mic a little bit this way.
And the grandkids, because it would take so much out of me, like Kaylee said, Mom, why don't you go down and see CG more? Well, I felt bad because how am I going to get out of the car? I'm going to wind up having to stay in the hotel because I was in such bad shape,
Yeah. And that was one of the reasons why you delayed so long to come down.
Yes. It was horrible. Yep. And before they started that in 2015, I'd already gotten hurt at work. And so that just started a downward spiral, surgeries and then 6 months after the knee replacement, after getting hurt and stuff, that's when actually 3 days after my knee replacement is when something started happening with my arms and my hands. And they thought it was something to do with surgery. But my knee was great. It was doing great. And the doctor couldn't figure it out. So I had to stay extra 2 weeks. And come to find out, probably about 6 months later, Dad had to put me in the hospital. And that's when I found out I had RA from all the special testing, which I prayed I wouldn't get because I took care of my dad for 7.5 years with it. So they have come a long way. They know a lot more than what they used to. And I've learned a lot of things. I mean, there was stuff that I was eating that was so high inflammation that I didn't even know about. You know, I really have to watch my salt now because my hands will swell and they hurt and they throb. So I know I have to be careful of that. You know, there's no more taking that salt shaker and no, like crazy. You know, I can't do it.
What did so you talk about boundaries, you talk about, you know me, I'm gonna love going down this rabbit hole. You've lost some friends, obviously, during this process. Because when you're codependent, you attract certain type of people.
Right.
And for people who don't know what codependent means, it's basically trying to find your worth through other people. And it makes you feel, it's like a drug. So you find your worth through other people.
Right.
And you put everyone first. And so naturally, codependent people or people who are codependent traits attract narcissistic relationships.
Yes.
And so, or people who are not narcissistic necessarily, but have strong narcissism traits.
Yes.
And so narcissism is all about self. Codependency is all about others. They're both bad. They're not good. You will have a little codependency to wake up in the morning to love yourself. You need a little narcissism to wake up. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. You need a little narcissism to wake up in the morning to take care of yourself, and you need a little codependency to love others well as you know as you can. But where the struggle is when those things become extreme. And so talk about some of the relationships. Obviously, you don't have to name any names, but what are some of the struggles that you've seen through some of the relationships that you had, that once you actually started taking care of yourself and you actually started saying no, which it's even with some of our own family members, what did you learn during that process?
I learned that people can be really selfish when you start taking care of yourself and they don't like it. I learned that when you start putting yourself first, that some people do not want you to do that.
And they're not used to you saying no to.
No.
Because you're always saying yes.
Yes.
Hey, you want to go to the birthday party? Yes.
Always.
Hey, you want to supply all the food? Yes.
Always. And wearing myself out and not taking care of me. And I've been doing that for how long? Forever. It seems like, you know. So that relationship changed, which I'm sorry, that's just how it's going to be, because I'm not going backwards. I can't.
Yeah.
I have to take care of me. I have to stay healthy, not only for me, but, you know, Dad and you kids and all that. I don't want to miss out. I want to go and do things.
Isn't it crazy to think that you actually have to say no more so that way you can enjoy the relationships around you better?
A lot more. Yeah. Yep. I've learned to speak up a lot more, and if I don't want to go do something, I'm not going to go do it. But see, before, you're like people pleasing.
Yeah, you'll say yes to anything.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll go.
I'll stay at the party for 3 hours and help you clean up. Yeah.
And just like, why did I do this?
Yeah.
You know, because I felt horrible. I looked horrible. And it's just like, you get tired of that. Yeah, it's been a big, big change in my life.
So one of the things too that we've both witnessed is when you're saying not to reward bad behavior. And so a lot of codependent people, and I'm on the codependency side too. Like I lean that direction.
Yes.
Everybody leans a direction, depending on how you grew up and your personality trait. You're going to either lean a little bit of codependency or a little bit of narcissism.
And we have a lot of codependency in our family.
And tons of codependency in our family. And we also have a lot of narcissism in our family too. So that's just part of it. And one of the things that you learn very quickly with us kids is I kept telling you, even to me, I said, do not reward bad behavior.
Yes.
And so rewards could be for your kids. It could be buying them stuff. It could be giving them your time. Those are usually the two main attributes that really give kids a direction. Hey, this behavior is good, subconsciously or consciously, or it's not good. Once you started doing it with us, you got a lot of pushback.
A lot.
From all of us, really.
From everybody.
Yeah. And so I told you it'd get worse before it get better. So talk about some examples that you had to do with us kids that you still have to practice to a degree that come off the top of your head that you got really big pushback. Even if that wasn't their intention, but that's just how they felt.
I want to say probably, there's a lot. I'm trying to think.
Two is like one of them I can think off the top of my head while you're thinking is grandkids.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
you felt obligated to watch grandkids.
Yeah.
And that it was actually your role, which it's
Yes.
not.
Right.
So if you're a grandparent out there, it is not your role to watch your grandkids.
It's not, like your younger sister said, Mom, you're Nana. Me and Shaq are mom and dad.
Yep.
You are Nana. We got this.
Yep.
And I've learned a lot from that, from her especially.
Yeah.
Because she's like, it's not you and Dad's job to raise. It's you and Dad's job, to visit, have fun, stuff like that, not to be the authority figure. No, that's their child. And I've had to really back off on that because I don't want to do that.
Which is a proper boundary for a grandparent. So if you're a grandparent struggling in the same position as my mom is, to help give you some clarity through the experiences that I've had, through the mentors I've had, and kind of helping guiding my mom through this process is whatever grandkid you're watching, you really need to submit to the authority of their parents and how they
Yes.
raise their kid, regardless if you agree with it or not, as long as like life, death threatening, I'm talking basics 101 here. Are they a timeout family? Are they a spanking family? Whatever,
Right.
whatever it may be, but you need to submit to them and not raise them how you would raise them. So, because one of the worst fears for a parent in general is for their grandparents to raise their kids how they don't want them to be raised. So for example, if you raise, for example, Jackson, we have my nephew's Jackson, he's 13 years old. If there's a specific thing that he is raised to, you need to acquire that because when they go back to that home, they're going to get confused if you raise them a different way.
That's right.
And so, yes, as a grandparent, is it your role and your responsibility to help raise the kids? Yes, when they're under your care and under your authority, when no one else is in the room, obviously, protect them. But your main role as a grandparent is to make sure that you love, you cherish them, but you also don't fight back against the authority figures that they have in their life. So that way it's consistent. And so my mom had to learn that because, for instance, Jackson is raised very differently than Jacoby, our other nephew. He's about 4 or 3.
He's 4.
He's 4 years old. And so some are great qualities, some are we don't agree with. But that's every family. Every family's going to have disagreements.
Yeah.
That's not bad or wrong. They're safe kids. They're in a safe environment. They're not going to get harmed. So my mom really had to practice that because she had a certain way of how she raised them. And I remember she would call me and really upset because she was like, man, this is life-threatening. I was like, no, Mom, it's not.
No.
Even though you don't agree with it and it's not as safe as you would want it to be,
Yes.
that is not your role.
Yep.
As long as, once again, it's not life-threatening and it's not some type of ill intent, you have to leave it alone. And that's a boundary that not only you have to put, but also the parents have to put.
Right.
And so,
Me and my mom have had conversations just recently, She would want me to say something or do something. I'm like, Mom, That's not my business. I'm not their parent, and I'm not doing that.
And so I'm so glad you brought that up because this is huge. So that's called the triangle method.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I mean by that is when somebody has a problem, let's say a person A has a problem with person B.
Mm-hmm.
Person A won't go to person B. They will go to person C.
Mm-hmm.
That's not okay. Unless you're seeking advice to handle the situation, not to draw somebody into that conflict. So person A needs to go to person B. And so what is very high in families, I do this too at work. I have to be careful. We all do this to a general degree, but it's just a triangle manipulation, what I call it. It's the triangle of manipulation. Let me bring in another third party that has nothing to do with this when I could have just solved the problem myself.
Right.
And so, I mean, just like in Matthew 18, it says that if you have a challenge with a person or you feel like they've wronged you, you need to go to that person.
Right.
Now, yes, you can seek counsel and wisdom before you do it, depending on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're seeking counsel or wisdom, are you doing it just to gossip or are you doing it to actually fix the problem? And our family struggles really bad with triangle method. So if my mom has a problem with my aunt, she would come to me. Or my grandmother has a problem with my sister, she goes to my mom.
Yes.
And that is the worst way you can solve family conflict, and it will destroy a family.
Mm-hmm.
Not only will it destroy a family, it'll destroy a marriage, it will destroy business relationships. I have to be careful with that. And I've had to apologize to my staff about that too. And so that's a great example of my mom putting a boundary up with her mom, saying like, hey, if you have a problem, it's not my business.
That's right.
That is a great rule to follow.
Right.
And that's a great response when you struggle with that kind of stuff.
Well, because like me and you have talked before, I've said I've always been the bad guy. You know what I mean? Sometimes. And so you gotta change a little bit because it's like, that's because I was speaking up for everybody. And like you said, one person is upset with another person or family or friends or whatever. I'm not doing that. Go. None of my business. Go talk to them.
One of the strongest things about codependency too is we feel like we have to protect everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And what that does is you do not let that person learn how to defend for themselves.
That was me. And severe anxiety with you kids. Always just making sure, I think that's part of anxiety where, a big part of it is worry.
Well, I mean, if you break down anxiety is harder than what I'm about to explain. It is harder said than done, right?
Yes.
So don't think I'm pushing anxiety as, oh, it's just this. Mm-hmm. Anxiety's hard. I've had it. I've had panic attacks before. Yes. I get it. It's tough.
Me too. It's
bad.
It's horrible.
Anxiety is trying to control something that you cannot control.
That's right. I still have it, but I'm more controlled about it now.
Yep. And so I'm just going to repeat that again.
Okay.
Anxiety is controlling something you cannot control.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of let that sink in. The reason why most anxiety happens is because you don't have control over it. That's why you have anxiety over it, because you can't control an individual, a job, a marriage. To a certain degree, there's only certain things that you could potentially control. And it's very small than you think, especially if you're a Christian, because mm-hmm. God's sovereignty exists. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about that, because I didn't know this. You told me this a couple years ago when you said you would lock yourself, whether in the bathroom or laundry room, and you just have a meltdown.
Yes.
And this is not the first time that I heard a mother tell me this, especially with coaching, and I've been in the game for a while, is mothers do this. Mm-hmm. And it's very known in the mom world, but no one talks about it. It's like the unknown talk, the topic that no one talks about. All right. And so talk a little bit about that. When was like your first one when you're like, I got to go cry, or I got to be in this room, or when did you start experiencing that type of?
I want to say it got really bad when Papa was sick, and I had a lot on me, taking care of you kids, working, dad, animals, and Papa being sick, living with us, it was hard. And just, I think I've never been through that with a parent. So it was really hard. So after everybody would go to bed at night, I would just go down the laundry room, shut the door, and cry because I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And pray because I did not know what to do. I felt trapped. I felt overwhelmed, very much so. And then the next day it'd start all over again, you know. And I wish I knew what I knew now because I probably would have been a lot better off, you know.
Yeah.
But you live and learn, and you just got to go from there. You're never too old not to learn, to put up boundaries. You're never, ever too old to do that.
I can't stress
You have
enough.
to. You know, like me and Dad. As you know, Dad struggles with that sometimes with the no thing. If you
Oh,
know
yeah,
how
Dad.
he does. He gets upset, like, I don't want to go this and that. I'm like, okay, so why can't you just say no? Well, I don't know. I said, it's very simple. You just say no. If you don't want to do something, you don't want to go do something, why are you upset about it? Just say no.
It's easy when you start learning how to say no. You're like, I don't get why
Yes.
people don't say no.
Yes. I'm like, you know, and Dad sometimes he'll say, oh, honey, you're just being stubborn. No, I'm not being stubborn. I'm putting up boundaries, you know?
And I'm so glad you brought that up because this is really good. Whether it's your spouse, whether it's your son to a mom, whether it's your best friend, when you start to put up boundaries and they're not used to that, the people who are closest to you, they'll say, hey, you're being mean, or,
Yes, or
hey,
stubborn.
or you're being stubborn. Those are some, and now their intent is not trying to think ill of you. So don't take it personally. They're just not used to the real you now.
It's true.
They're adjusting, and so they're learning themselves, like, who is this person? And I can't stress this enough. As you're putting boundaries up, and which I think is a major role of why my mom lost so much weight, because the stress went down so much.
A lot.
And when your stress goes down so much, and you're not stressing so much, you don't need that carb hit. You don't need that sugar hit anymore. You don't need that
No.
endorphins, that
Me-
comfort anymore, because you don't have that much anxiety as you used to.
No. Me and Dad live a quiet life. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
One of the, what was I going for that?
I don't know.
Oh, Dad. So
Dad.
like when we have a loved one do that, I do this too. So like I'm guilty as charged. But when you start putting up boundaries, it's very important to you that you let other people around you that are closest to you, that you see you every single day, that, hey, I'm working on myself. I'm putting up boundaries, and this could be extreme, but I need you to go with me on this. So it's very important to warn people. Don't just go, berserk with it. It's very important to, like, if you have grandkids and you're about to start to put boundaries up with them, let them know, sit down your grandkids and let them know, like, hey, this has nothing to do with you. I've lost the boundaries of, letting you get so much sugar. Let's say, every time you come to my house, I just let you go straight into the donut thing. I realize that by you eating like 20 donuts and basically having a sugar coma, it's not okay for you doing that every single time you come in here 3 times a week. So I'm going to put up a boundary and let you know I've learned that's just not okay for you. It's not healthy for you. So I don't want you to think that I'm punishing you. So it's very important to let them know. I don't care how old they are. I don't care if they're 3 all the way up to they're 18 or into their 99. Make sure you let these people know that you're putting up boundaries, because you will throw people off once you start to do it, because you're operating out of your own character that is not consistent with the old you.
Right. And it's so important on who you surround yourself with too. It really is.
You keep bringing up all these good points. So there is an old saying that I didn't really believe in at a time, but the 5 people you surround yourself with the most really can dictate where your potential life could go. And that is very, very true. It's also in Proverbs, be careful who you surround yourself with. Be careful about evildoers. Like, be careful. And it is true. It sounds so simple, but when Mom looked back some of the friends that she lost, she was like, I had to lose them to get to where I was.
It's true. Very true.
And that was part of the process. And same thing here. And sometimes you have friends for seasons. Sometimes you have them for a season.
Or sometime you have them since kindergarten.
Yeah.
And they're great.
And once again, don't take too personal of relationships that come and go.
Yes.
Codependent people really, really struggle. Strong degree with either having a deep friendship or no friendship at all. And that is a very anxiety-filled, depressed life to live. You're going to have friends that you only do certain things with. For example,
Yes.
I might only have my dirt biking buddies.
Mm-hmm.
My mom might only have her shopping buddies.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean you got to hang out over 24/7 or every other hobby that you do.
Right.
It's okay. And so make sure that if you are leaning more on the codependency side, you're struggling with anxiety a lot and depression, and you feel like your boundaries are, and you just feel like you're losing control of your life, make sure you allow friends to operate how they are. Don't try to control them.
Mm-mm.
And that could be challenging for a codependency person, because if you lose a friendship, you feel like you lose your identity.
Yep. I've had, me and my friends have had conversations about, since you kids are older than some of my friends' kids, and I tell them, whatever you do, don't make the mistake I did. Let them live their life. You do not need to control them. You do not need to be accountable for them. If they need something, they will ask you. I've learned that too, remember?
Yeah.
Some of the gifts you got from me that you didn't even want.
This is really funny. We'll bring up another one. This is really, really hilarious. And this is a really good example for every family member operating about gifts. So, long story short, or what I always say, shorter story shorter. Our family has a bad way of handling gifts. We give gifts because it makes us feel good.
Very giving.
Right? We'll give you gifts all the time.
Oh, yeah.
But you might not like them at all.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
And sorry to break it to you, if you're listening to this and you do that, stop doing that.
I've learned so much for that, and it is so less stressful. Now I just ask my kids, give me 5 ideas for your birthday, for Christmas. It's so much nicer because then I know that you kids are going to love it and you're going to use it instead of throwing it in the back of the closet or
Yep.
throwing it in the garbage.
Yep. And there's a reason why everyone can relate to this. There's a reason why grandma and grandpa give you stuff that you never want. Everyone goes through this. You know what that felt like. Please stop doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't keep passing along that. So the example I'll give you is my mom got me a quilt. And if anyone knows me on the podcast, me personally, I don't even remember if I ever wanted a quilt.
Well, and I bought you blankets before that.
And you bought me a whole bunch of blankets before that. And so there had to be a point in time where my mom would always ask me, oh, how'd you like to be a gift? And I would lie, right? Because I was codependent and I wanted to hurt her feelings.
Right.
And so it actually started making me bitter. And that's when you start to know, like, hey, I got to say something, especially if you're on the codependency side. You got to be like, okay, my check engine light's going off. Bitter indication is a huge one that you're not speaking up for yourself, especially if it's a consistent engine light.
Mm-hmm.
And so the engine light on your dashboard, bitterness for codependency people, is your good indicator that it's costing too much of you. Mm-hmm. And so I remember I went to my mom and she was like, oh, how'd you like the gift? I'm like, to be honest with you, I just don't like it. I didn't want it. And I didn't know how to do this, so I was just blunt and straightforward. You could be more articulate with your words than I was. And my mom was really mad and upset. She was crying. She didn't talk to me for like 2 weeks.
I was really upset.
And
then all of a sudden I got it.
You got it. Once I explained it to her, and then she called me, and then you apologized. You're like, hey, I'm sorry. And then we talked about it more. And then she's like, my mom used to do the same thing to me. And then once we got out of our feelings, right? Feel your feels. There's nothing wrong with feeling your feelings, but don't let them control your life.
Well, I was doing it to Haley too. And then after me and you, remember I told you after me and you talked, I called Haley up and I said, Haley, do I get you stuff that you don't want? And she was quiet. Same thing. She didn't want to hurt my feelings. And I said, just tell me. And she's like, well, Mom, I've got like probably 100 pairs of black leggings that you keep buying. And I'm like, I am so sorry. I said, I'm not doing that anymore. If you kids want anything, you let me know, and then I'll get ideas for like birthdays, whatever. And if you need something in between then, you can tell me. I'm not doing this anymore. This is ridiculous, and I feel bad. Like, I got him this cow picture. Shaq and Hay don't even like cows. And they had it in their closet, and I seen it. I was like, why is that cow picture in there? I paid a lot of money for that. And neither one of them said nothing. And the baby liked it. Kobe liked it, but he was playing with it in the closet. And I thought, oh my gosh, they don't like it. And, just stuff like that as a mom and a grandma, you don't know. And oh my gosh, can you imagine? I got them a big old cow picture, and the cow was wearing sunglasses. And I wanted them to hang that up in their house.
And the reason why my mom got it is because she liked it.
I liked it.
So if you do that, laugh now. It's okay. But please stop doing that.
It's so bad.
I'm trying not to laugh.
It's
Y'all,
so
usually
bad.
I'm a huge laugher
Oh my gosh.
on my podcast, but I have the broken ribs. I crashed my dirt bike, so I'm trying not to cough or laugh too much.
I mean, even poor Shaq. He didn't say anything to me at first. And then eventually he did. I was buying Shaq Christmas jammies. Okay? Shaq don't like wearing Christmas jammies.
You hear that, grandmothers?
He finally said to me one time, I was going to buy him and Haley the baby Christmas PJs all matching. And he said, no, not me. I said, you don't like them, Shaq? No, here, I thought he loved them. I ain't never bought them again for him. If he don't like them, that's cool, and that's fine by me. I felt so bad.
Oh my God. So again, another boundary you can put up with your family members is, this is a tough one, but if there are gifts that you're receiving that you don't like, majority of people give gifts because they like them. And that's not what a gift is for. A gift is to give to them. That's something that they're going to treasure and that they would think. If you don't want people asking you, then what you could do is observe what they do. What gets excited, what their eyes light up if you talk to them about, what do they do most of their time. And then you can surprise them with certain stuff in that way, if you're that good. But most people are not.
And it's nice too because, as I told you, I talked a lot about a lot of people in the family, even Dad. I'm like, I want you to tell me like what you need in that, because I don't want to get like this birthday, he told me he wanted AirPods and shoes. I was like, okay, great, And even Jackson, we had a talk and he goes, well, Nana, some things. I said, okay, from now on, if you need something, you let Nana know and you tell me. And then for birthdays, Christmas, whatever, I'll get ideas from you. He loved it because what I didn't realize is that he wanted the books by Captain Underpants at one year.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. And I got him this other stupid thing he never even played with. So, yeah, that was a big learning curve, too.
It sounds crazy, but like little boundaries like this that you put up help you lose weight. They do.
They really do.
Because if your relationship has less strain on it, you will have less anxiety, less depression. Your nervous system, okay, this is a big thing. I learned this from Coach Michael Bain. Is your nervous system is king and your gut is queen. So if you're always constantly stressed out,
Yes.
it's going to be really, really hard to lose weight. Because weight loss in general, a lot of people don't know this, is it's stressful on your body to lose weight. And so I always encourage people, let's move first and let's put up boundaries. I usually don't ever tell them to touch food or any of that stuff because that is stressful enough. And so Mom's been putting up boundaries for a while.
Yep. And I mean, I like, we've been going out to eat and stuff. Now, when I eat, I can feel myself getting full. Like I told you before, it was just like, I was just a mess, and just kept eating and just felt miserable. Now I can feel it and I stop.
This is really good. I'm glad another good one you brought up is internal boundaries with your gut. That's huge. So what Mom is explaining here is that you need to listen to your body.
Yes.
And it might take some time. So don't think like, well, I don't really know when to stop eating. That is a thing for a lot of people. They struggle with that.
Yes.
As you learn to put up boundaries internally and externally, and so external, like the boundaries you talked about like the blankets, right? Don't buy if they don't want it. The internal boundary is how you perceive stuff. And so if somebody is harsh with you, but they're not meaning to be harsh with you, and you take it personally, that's an internal boundary problem. And so a good example would be that, hey, Mom, I really didn't like my blanket that I got. And then her mind's like, oh, he must not love me. That is an internal boundary because I didn't say that. right? But that's what you said. And so internal and external boundaries are huge in weight loss as we go through this. But
I'm
just one
still a
thing.
work in progress and still learning
Same here.
so much, you know.
Yeah.
It's like I said, I got a long ways to go, but I've come a long way.
Come a very long way.
A long way. I mean, I couldn't even do remember, I couldn't do nothing of that. It
Yeah.
was horrible. I couldn't breathe good. And in my feet, I don't even know how I carried myself on my own 2 feet because I was just so swollen up.
Because at a point in time, you had to get stairs to get into your bed too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because
And
it
that's
was
when
so painful.
That was one of the big indicators. Oh, we got to sit down and talk to mom.
It was horrible.
And guys, if you do have a grandmother or a loved one that you're really close with to have that conversation, I will let you know it is not easy.
No.
Make sure you pray about it. Make sure you seek counsel on it. When you do talk to them, you are going to have to be direct, but there is a way to be direct. So example, what I did was I sat down my mom and dad and basically told them what I thought about their health. And if I were to get married, if I were to have kids, or if I were to get to some of these business goals I have, they wouldn't see them potentially. And so I also use that because parents love their kids usually. Mm-hmm. Regardless if you're a bad parent or not, you have this general connection with them. It's very rare that you don't have that. And mom cried during that process. She was really upset. The whole time. And dad, he was just quiet.
That's how he handles it.
Men usually are like that. They have to process a little bit. They're not so emotional, right? And that is normal. Like, oh, don't get the guns out. Like I can hear it right now. Like women are too emotional and men are never emotional. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is naturally women do experience negative emotion at a higher rate.
Yes.
They just do. That's why they're nurturers. That's why you don't see a mom you don't see, this is a great example. I love this one. They use this. If you were to drop your kids off at daycare and you see a whole bunch of men, that'd be weird. Right? If you drop off your kid to a daycare and there's a whole bunch of women, that's calming. Women have this calming, nurturing, helping agent in them naturally. Mm-hmm. God has given them that. Mm-hmm. And so it's women, if you're out there and you're like, oh, I'm not emotional, you're lying to yourself. I'm just letting you know right now. You're lying to yourself. You're suppressing your emotion. Now, is there women who have stronger emotions than others? Absolutely.
Yes.
Is there men? Absolutely. I'm not saying that. Like there's men who are more emotional. I'm one of those guys too. But if we were looking at a spectrum from all women and all men versus women are naturally more emotionally in tune. Mm-hmm. Men think more logically. That's just how it is. And there are pros, cons to each one. That's why God has made both of us so that way we can help each other out. It is not good for man to be alone. And there's a reason for that. And same thing vice versa for a woman. We bring so much to the table. And men sometimes don't think emotionally enough with certain decisions. And that can hurt them because then they go through life not passionate about anything. Right. And then women sometimes think about their decisions too emotionally too much. And then logically, it doesn't make any sense. And it just hurts everyone else around them. So there's pros and cons to both. Mm-hmm. And some women are more masculine than others, and vice versa for men too. So not saying don't get your guns out too much. When I say that, across the board, that's psychology 101.
That book you had me read was my first breakthrough with that book was hard. Remember?
With the boundaries?
The boundaries book.
Oh yeah. So the boundaries.
It was very, very hard for me to read that. At one point I put it down sometime, left it for a few weeks and went back to it and read the whole thing that time and actually read it a second time. Yeah.
And the book that we're talking about here is Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud. Mm-hmm. A great book. Mm-hmm. And if you're not a Christian and you're listening to this, it is geared more towards the Christian faith. I wouldn't say it is definitely, but I've had people who are not Christians read it and they took around some great advice. So don't think like it's something that you can't read if you're not a Christian. Right. It is a great book to read. I encourage everyone to read it. Yeah. I always tell there's a couple books that you should read before you're 18. And if you have kids, this is one of them. Mm-hmm. before they leave the house, make sure they read that book.
Yeah.
It'll help them tremendously of how to put up boundaries biblically
Mm-hmm.
and not feel bad for doing it, quote unquote. But yeah, so you read the book. How many times did you read it?
Twice now.
Twice. Now, did you feel like you took away something different from the first time you read it?
Yeah, I feel like I learned more about, in accountability and all that kind of stuff too. That's really big for me.
Accountability.
Yeah, to be accountable for, stuff that I was doing.
Yeah.
Accountable for, nobody's going to do this for me. I finally thought nobody can make me happy. Nobody can stop me from eating all that sugar, the medicine. I'm in charge of my health. I'm an advocate for my health. I don't have to do all that stuff, and it taught me a lot. That book did.
What are some of the takeaways that the last time you read it that kind of stand out to you that you're like, whether it's example or something that you need to apply for your life that you're just like, whoa, that one really stood out to me?
I want to say not being in you kids' lives. I'm not saying this right. Having boundaries towards you kids where I'm not in your lives, like bossing you and telling you what to do, calling you every minute, texting every minute, trying to take charge of everything. I mean, you can't do that.
Yeah.
The kids are grown. People say stuff, even while your kids are grown, they'll say, well, why would CJ do that? Or Ariel or Haley or whatever. I'm like, I don't know. That they're grown. That's their business. They can deal with it.
Yeah. And parents, you will get pressure from other parents.
Yes.
And two, sometimes it's not pressure, it's perceived pressure.
Yeah, right.
Like some people will just ask about, like your kid did this, so-and-so.
Mm-hmm.
They're just genuinely curious.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're insecure about potentially how that kid will reflect you, you will go in defense mode right away.
Right.
And so sometimes it's perceived pressure,
Mm-hmm.
which that would be a good example. And sometimes it is pressure. Sometimes a family member will come to you and be like, hey, CJ did this on Facebook.
Yes.
Are you going to do anything about it?
I hate that. I hate that. I'm just like,
Once
they're grown.
again, triangle.
Yeah.
Be careful of the triangle method. It is basic one-on-one relationship.
I'm like, they're
If
grown.
they have a problem with your kid, tell them to go to talk to their
Yes.
kid.
I'm like, they're grown. They got their own house, pay their own bills. That's on them.
Oh, tell them about it, 'cause this is a good example that you did with me. You said one time my dad or one of my sisters, they asked me like, CJ, tell CJ he can come to do this, blah, 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 or something along the lines.
Yes.
And you were just like, no. You can ask CJ because I did not make this event up, this party up. Like, you need to go talk to him. Once again, that's a good boundary too.
Yeah, I'm
and
not
so
doing it. No.
be careful. Some people will be like, oh, you need, because they don't want to tell that person because they know they potentially could say no or yes.
Yeah. And even Dad, remember, I love him. He's my number one supporter, but he cracks me up. Remember, he used to always want me to take care of the bad things because he doesn't like the conflict and all that, and then of course, like I told you, I was the big bad witch to everybody, but actually it was Dad saying it, but he didn't want to say it.
So guys, this is a really good point. I love this part about my parents. Every relationship is like this, and sometimes it's to a degree where it could be very helpful, but also very toxic at the same time.
Yes.
And relationships are like this too, any relationship. But a person could be a conflict avoider,
Mm-hmm.
and then somebody can be a conflict presser.
Right.
My mom is a conflict presser.
Yes.
She wants to get it done and over with. Stab in the heart. Let's get it done.
And I say what I say, and I'm not afraid.
And I'm done. Dad, he is the one that it's in no man's land getting shot from both sides. He's like, I'm out of here. Now, it could be vice versa, but that's one of the cons of the relationship that they struggled with is one wanted to deal with the conflict. One was like, I need to think about it.
Right. Yes. Yeah, that's so true.
So you can imagine our house like a tornado. My mom's coming to my dad, and my dad's like, no, not again.
That's so true. That's so true.
But Yeah. So when you have conflict or trouble with anyone, make sure that if you have a person who's a conflict avoider, make sure you give them enough space.
Mm-hmm.
Usually conflict
Yes.
avoiders are internal processors,
Right.
and so they need to process a lot longer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with that intake, some conflict avoiders will just keep avoiding conflict, and it's no longer fair for anyone. And so it's very important to hold them accountable. Like, hey, when do you think this will be appropriate time to make the decision? For example, like if my parents made a decision on whether if they're going to buy a big gift for one of us.
Yes.
It's like, it's going to take my dad a lot longer to make that decision than it will be my mom.
Mm-hmm.
My mom is a spender. My dad is a saver.
Amen.
Right? Once again, people who are more on the conflict pressers are quicker. Let's get this done. Makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Conflict avoiders, savers. Let me think about this. Let me meditate on this.
Yes.
Let me leave it alone for a little bit and come back to it.
And maybe not come back to it.
Yep. So there's pros and cons to each of those. Sometimes a conflict avoider could be right because there's no reason to wake up a sleeping dog.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's some conflict that just needs to be left alone.
Yes.
And there's certain conflicts that need to be pressed and need to be talked about, regardless if the relationship could be potentially lost.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I bring that up is most conflict is delayed or not talked about because they're more concerned about maintaining the relationship than the health of the relationship. Let me repeat that. We are more concerned about maintaining the relationship instead of the health of the relationship. And so if you're operating in that anxiety, depressed feeling, it's only going to delay anxiety and depression slowly down the long haul. And before you know, it's going to come out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Conflict delayed is conflict multiplied.
Right.
Before you know it, you don't even know where you started from. Don't quote me on that. That's Dr. Henry Cloud. Got that from his book. Conflict delayed is conflict multiplied. There is certain conflict that needs to be addressed, and there's certain that just need to be let go. Example, easy one. You're driving down the road. A guy gives you the middle finger. Move on. Okay? Don't engage that conflict. There's no reason for it. Somebody comes to you and says, hey, you really hurt my feelings, and so did this. Well, engage in that conflict, right?
Right.
Conflict is supposed to be solved.
Yes.
And sometimes it might take a couple conversations to be solved.
Mm-hmm. That's very true.
And that's okay too.
It is.
You might walk away with both being upset and angry at each other.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know that whole I don't know where this came from. Don't go to bed angry. That is baloney. Sometimes you do.
You do.
And
That's true.
we're human. You're not going to go. It's just
you
part
can
of life.
still tell your significant other or whoever you love them, kiss goodnight, but you still can be upset.
Oh, absolutely.
You're allowed that.
Yeah. Feel your feels. Just don't let them control you.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with feeling your feelings.
Yeah.
You can be angry. And one of the things that really helped, and I try to help with my dad, because dad is more he struggles with anger because he suppresses, right? Conflict avoiders,
Yes.
they suppress, and then they just blow up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one too, so don't think I'm picking on my dad. I picked that up from him.
Mm-hmm.
So there's only two really symptoms that people get angry with. One is you're scared, or B, you're trying to control something. That's the only reason why people get angry. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't feel anger. You're going to feel anger. It is going to come.
Mm-hmm.
But just make sure you operate in the mind as my feelings are my emotional checklist.
Mm-hmm.
It helps give me my reports of how I'm feeling, whether it be true or not. That just is.
Right.
And it's up to you to do with what those reports are and kind of evaluate those. So I hope that helps a lot of us, because that was a huge one for me, as mom knows this, but my grandfather struggled with anger really bad. Did he get sued? Or almost got sued and lost their house?
Which one? Papa, the other Papa.
Yeah, his dad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he punched a guy right in his face.
He threatened to.
Yeah. And so, and then my dad struggled with that too at work. And so that's one of the things that I'm like, okay, I need to figure this out because obviously this is a generational thing.
Mm-hmm.
Patterns happen in your family.
Yes.
We cannot sit there and say, well, this is just how I'm made up.
Right.
Boundaries, like that is just a victim. You're giving that power over your life.
Mm-hmm.
Patterns happen. If, oh, my family just struggles with diabetes. No, it's a pattern in your family of how you've been eating, and that's how you all been eating. It's been passed down to you.
Yes.
And so it's up to you to change that pattern.
I think too, having you me and Dad, wife, and having kids, really took Dad to the highest level. Because, as you know, if you kids ever were mistreated, it wasn't good.
Yeah.
When he went to, so, you know, as he's gotten older, he's gotten better, but he can still go there with his wife and kids. He will.
Yeah, but I'll tell you this too is my dad's way of solving things is not good at times, and he's learned to. He's still learning, and he's gotten a lot better than his dad. So he's way better. But I remember one time I came. I don't know if you know the story, but I came one time I was home and I was in. I think I couldn't drive at the time, so I had to be 15 or 16. Well, 16 you're driving. I couldn't drive alone. So I walked to the golf course.
You and Garrett, right?
Nope,
No,
this
it was
was just me.
you. Okay.
I walked to the golf course to knock out 9 holes, which is a local golf course in our hometown. And I jumped off on hole 3, which if you don't know golf, you're supposed to go on hole 1. But the guy who owned the course was like, hey, it's okay as long as no one's there. I didn't see one in there. I didn't.
Right.
And so I hit off, and there's this guy that hits this golf ball and almost hits me. I'm like, oh, maybe he just didn't see me. And then he did it again, almost hit me again. And then he starts yelling and cussing at me. And Mom knows this. I hate being yelled at. Mm-hmm. I never like it. I don't like when people cuss at me.
Nope.
You could just look at me and I'd cry. Right? That was me. Some kids are not like that.
And you never had a spanking in your life.
Yeah, you can just look at me.
One.
Like you'd be like, nope. I wouldn't. That would turn me over my grave. So I went home and I was a wreck. I was upset, sad, because I was like, I generally didn't see him, and I tried to apologize to him, and I knew my dad knew him, and I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And so I'm just like, okay, clean yourself up, act like it never happened, because once again, being codependent, I didn't want my dad to know what happened.
Because you knew he'd get upset.
I knew he'd get upset. And so I went home, and my dad's like, hey, you went home early. I'm trying to hide my face, had my hat on, so I kind of tucked my hat a little lower. And he was like, what's wrong? I'm like, oh, nothing. I'm just swinging the golf course, and he lifts up my hat. He's like, what is wrong? I'm like, crap. Like, obviously, my dad knows who I am. I was trying to hide. But I was really upset, and I just started crying. I was like, I was at this golf course, I was at the golf course, really, really upset, and this guy started screaming at me. And he asked me all these questions to make sure that I wasn't in the wrong. I said, no, Dad. I was like, I didn't do it. He left immediately to go over to that golf course, and I was like, crap. So the moral to that story, Dad didn't do anything, but Dad did threaten him, which was not good. That's not how you solve it. Right. But and the reason why I bring that up is not to boast on my dad's anger, but that if a parent does that, whether you're a mom or a dad, your kid will be more concerned about what you will potentially do.
Yes.
Than actually helping you. And so you don't share stuff.
And that was me too.
Right. And so my mom's the same way.
Bad temper, I mean, I'm a lot 100% better and totally different, but
because she chewed out my wrestling coach too.
Oh yeah.
But and the reason why I bring that up is because if you're a parent, it's very important to accept their emotional reports, walk them through the process, and don't get me wrong, as a parent, you need to go have a conversation with that guy who did that to me. But there's a way to do that, so that way your kid can operate of how to do that. Because what I learned was, oh, that's how you solve stuff around here.
Right.
If somebody does that to my son, I'm gonna go over there and kick his butt. And that's just not how you do it. There's a way to solve that in that process. But I bring that story in as that's not the way to do it. But that's the way our family operated. Now, if I told my grandpa Bill that, he'd have been in jail.
Oh yes.
So notice the difference.
Yes.
So the pattern is getting better, and then hopefully, Lord willing, I'm gonna do better. Because
but that's just how we grew up.
Yep.
And that's how my mom was too.
Yep.
So horrible temper, and she didn't care. She'd
Yep.
do the same thing, and I think that's just part of how you grow up sometimes, you know.
Yep.
Which I think. So since I've had the rheumatoid arthritis, I've had to learn through the years. I cannot get so upset and so mad and stressed, because then it brings on the RA flares, which are horrific. I try really hard not to go there. Sometimes it's hard when you're upset or you're stressed about something, but I've gotten a lot better because
It hurts.
I can't. It hurts
Yeah.
me too much. I just got to be like, oh, well, whatever.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because if you don't learn how to control your anger will control you.
Yes, I will.
And as you get older, you become more frail. Just part of the process
It
as you
is.
age.
Yes, yes.
It's just how it is. And so I've literally know stories of men getting so mad that they had a heart attack.
Yes, it's
Like
true.
legitimately, like I had one last month. My client told me that his grandfather got so mad because this guy cut his grass the wrong way and had a heart attack because he was
Yes,
fuming
yes.
and he
'Cause
couldn't
you're
breathe
older.
because he was so mad.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, makes you jump on that quick,
Hmm.
because as you get older, it becomes harder on your body, because anger is tough on your body.
It is.
It's
Me
very,
and
very
Dad have got
important.
that saying now, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
That's a big thing now. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
You know,
And majority of the stuff that we get angry at is not worth it.
it's not. I love our quiet life, and just, you know, like Dad will say, I'm not going to worry about it.
Yeah.
Not our problem.
Yep.
And he'll be like, who cares? I mean, it's just, you know.
And as you get older, when you start to put up boundaries,
Yes.
you'll start to
yes.
realize very quickly that
Yeah.
some
Very
of
much
this, you'll be
so.
able to decipher of like, oh, this is worth engaging and this is
Yes.
not.
Yes. This autoimmune disease has changed me a lot.
Yeah.
A lot, you know. And then going through the death of my dad before that.
Yeah.
It was rough. I think that changed. I think that changes everybody, no matter what you go, no matter who it is, you know.
Yeah. Because you were close with your dad.
Yes.
So that was a big, just to give you a little context too, like my mom was very close to
Mm-hmm.
her dad, and then their parents split and got divorced,
He lived with us.
and he was great.
Yeah,
He was a great grandpa. I miss him a lot
he did.
because I lost him in 7th grade.
Mm-hmm. He sure did. He loved Zion.
Yeah.
You know,
That's our town.
gave a
Zion.
lot. And he was a police officer, retired from there, and he had a lot of friends, and everybody loved him. He treated everybody like he would want to be treated, and
Yeah.
he treated everybody's kids like he treated his kids,
Now,
which was me and my sister, which was awesome.
so now I like this because we know how good grandpa was.
Mm-hmm.
But what are some of the things that you look back on boundary wise that really hurts you to be the mom that you could have been or you're striving to be? Because a lot of people struggle with this because it's always served them so well. But sometimes serving so well is actually hurting them to grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say Dad put everybody first before himself,
Yep.
and his health suffered because of it.
Big time.
We never wanted for anything.
Yep.
We had the best of everything.
Yep.
But he dearly suffered,
Yep.
working, 2 and 3 jobs and always doing something, and,
And barely saw him when he was working.
mm-mm. And I felt so bad for him, and then when he got sick, we had all that time, precious time. We got to talk a lot about things that I didn't even realize, when things that he gave me advice then, there's, as you know, some days he couldn't get up out of the bed. So,
Yeah.
just take a chair and go in there and sit with him and talk, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot from him on things like that. He's like, "Hun, don't do what I did. It was a big mistake,
And that's when he was bedridden in our house.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather was basically telling my mom,
Mm-hmm.
her dad, is telling her like, hey, like, yeah, I know this worked out well for you, but this is what it did for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I hope that encourages grandparents and parents out there that,
God, did he love you kids?
yeah, he did.
I don't know if you remember this or not, but you wanted a new paintball thing because you and Buck and Wes and Garrett were all doing that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, playing paintball.
Yeah, and you guys were having a good old time. Well, I guess you and Papa were talking about it, and you wanted to get a little bigger and better. And I said, no, Dad. What he's got is fine, you know. Okay. Well, I thought he left it at that. Well, then he told me he was taking you to the mall to go with him to get some Levi's. And y'all come back with this big thing, you know. And I remember saying to him, Dad. And he's like, what? It's my money. I worked hard for it. If I can't watch him enjoy it, why even be here? And I was like, okay, all right, you know. And it was his money, and he did work hard for it. So.
And just a good example of him putting up boundaries. Of
Yes.
Like, listen, like.
Exactly.
Because my mom, you felt bad.
Yeah, I felt bad. But that's just the way he was. He was like that with all of us, my sister and her family, and, you know, he was just a very giving person.
Yeah, he gave a lot more than I thought. I didn't realize how much he gave.
Yeah.
Even to like missionaries.
Yeah, he really loved Uncle Bill, as Papa called him, Milliken, Bill Milliken. He really loved helping that with the missionary, and only thing he asked of Bill, I want to see what all you guys do and this and that, you know. And I never knew that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that to the funeral.
Yeah, we did not know that he was giving that stuff. And
No, none of that stuff.
which is great because, I mean, don't let your left hand know from your right hand.
Right.
The old biblical term is when you're giving, give it out of the grace and the love out of your heart. So.
That's right.
And he did it.
Mm-hmm.
He did it well. That's one of the things he did well with.
Yep. Nana and Peppa Judah, too. You know, they were great people and good grandparents to you guys. And you got that special time with them during college the first few years,
Yep.
which was great. Who would have known what was really planned out? But
Yep.
there was a reason why you were down there with them for that, you know, for that 3 years. And
And I got to learn a lot of how Dad grew up,
you really did.
which kind of helped me put things in perspective too. With just, oh, that makes sense of why Dad struggled with this,
Right.
why he's really good at this.
Yes. Yes.
It's really, really cool as I started being more observant and started learning.
Mm-hmm.
Because I tell Mom this all the time, and cause she feels this the same way, and she did this at the same time. Is like, regardless of how many lies you potentially tell your kid, whether it's little white lies or whether it's big white lies, they're eventually going to grow old enough and wise enough to figure all them out.
Mm-hmm.
So try to be open and honest as much as you can, because sometimes we're not honest because we're trying to protect them,
Mm-hmm.
but in reality it's because we're embarrassed.
Yeah, it's true. Because I didn't want you kids to know how much depression, anxiety I was going through. So I thought I was hiding it, which I was not.
No.
I mean, you kids
If you're-
definitely knew.
If you guys,
know?
if anyone on the podcast listens to this, if you're hearing this, if you struggle with anxiety and depression and you're just keeping it inside, everyone knows.
Mm-hmm.
Your body language shows it.
Yes.
You're not a good hider, regardless of what you say.
I remember the first time I had a panic attack. Dad was with me, and I didn't know what it was. I really thought I was having a heart attack. Dad's like, "You're having a panic attack. I've had them before." And I'm like, "What is it?" You know? Little did I know I'd been having them forever and didn't know. It was like, I felt like a scaredy feeling, you know? And, you know, eventually I had to go to counseling and get some help. And I'm not, back in the day now, I would have never said this. But it's so important to take care of your mental health. I don't care what anybody says. Some people may need medication, some people may not. Whatever you have to do, you make that decision. You're the one that has to live with that. And I'm telling you, anxiety can cripple you.
Yep.
It's hard.
So you can't blame it on your kids, your
No.
spouse. You can't blame it on your family tree.
No.
You can't say it's gene in my genes.
No. And it was rough, and I thought I was hiding it from you kids. And you know, me, you know how Mom is. I love to laugh and cut up and all that. And it seems like, I think that when you're that kind of person like me and Papa Don are, I'm a lot like my dad, joking around and just love my friends and my family. And you don't want people to know, as I used to think, that's a bad quality in me. I don't want people to know I'm suffering with that. So I would hide it.
Yep.
But that's not true. That's not true.
Yeah,
At all.
most of the happiest, funniest people. I mean, you look at the comedians.
Oh yeah.
Comedians, they struggle with depression
Oh yeah.
to a very high degree.
Now I look back and I remember my dad. You
Yeah.
know, when you think about it, thinking, I think my dad was struggling.
Oh,
He
yeah,
didn't
he was
want
struggling.
anybody to know.
Yep.
You know, and that's how I was, and I didn't want you kids to get it.
Yep.
That was
And
my thing.
two is, we can't underlook this too, is like when a man is working 2 to 3 jobs,
Yes.
that was common back then, but that was not normal.
No. Well, remember what the boss told Dad
Yeah.
when Dad got upset because
Because my
he
dad's a
was working
workaholic too.
He was a workaholic, and
Because he
his
didn't,
boss-
once again, he didn't say how to say no.
right, and
Right? Because he felt like if I don't provide this for my family,
Yes.
they will think I'll be less significant to them.
yes,
And men struggle with that to a high degree.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a man and you're not listening on this podcast, if you're providing shelter and food in their belly, that is all you're supposed to provide them. Everything else is a plus.
Mm-hmm.
Sports is a hobby. It is not a biblical mandate for you to supply sports for your family. If it's financially draining you to take care of yourself as a man, to lead your family, you stop that.
Yep. Well, I remember what you used to say about Dad's shoes. You're like, Mom, I remember Dad would just like wear these cheap shoes, and us kids would have Jordans, whatever. But that's how we were raised.
Yep.
That's how I was raised, and especially me. That's how I was raised.
Yep.
And yeah, that was
Because my mom and my Aunt Belinda, they didn't know what no meant for my grandfather.
no.
Which also
Never.
could hurt you in your relationships to
Never.
come.
We
'Cause-
took that into our marriage
You have these unrealistic expectations.
because we wanted for nothing.
Yep.
And we said anything. I mean, we had everything. you could
And
think of.
guess what happened with that concept too, is now you have 2 wives who are spenders.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom and my aunt were both spenders. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. If
Right.
you get a relationship, my dad was a saver, so they counterbalance each other out.
Yes, yes.
But if you don't put up boundaries and never say no to your kids,
That's true. That's very true.
remember, know the difference between needs and wants,
Mm-hmm.
please, because your job as a parent, my job as an uncle, is to prepare my nephew, or my mom is prepare her grandbabies, is to prepare them for the spouse that they potentially are going to have.
Mm-hmm.
If you lose sight of that, you will start either being more codependent or more narcissistic. I
Yeah.
firmly believe that.
That's very true. That's very, very
So
true.
prepare them as if they were going to leave tomorrow. That's your job. Like, for instance, my nephew came a couple summers ago and didn't know how to tie his shoes. He was very frustrated. And guess what I did? We sat there and we learned how to tie his shoes. I don't care how long it took. I would schedule a place for us to go, but I would do it 30 minutes ahead of time because I knew that potentially he would use that time against me. Like, oh, we got to go though. It's like, nope, we got 30 minutes. So you have to sit and figure this out.
Mm-hmm. And he learned it.
And he learned it very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I need boundaries. So yeah, my grandfather would do anything, but if you're remembered as a parent or as a grandparent, if you're remembered as never saying no and giving your kids everything they wanted, you've missed the mark.
Mm-hmm.
You missed it.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing goes with this. If you're very well liked on everyone and no one has anything bad to say, you haven't really spoke how you truly feel.
All right, that's true.
You haven't.
That's very true.
You just haven't. And so I'm not saying you need to go outside and look for conflict. I'm not saying you
No.
need to stir up strife. I'm not
No.
saying that. But what I am saying is if you're more on the codependency side, like me and my mom are,
Mm-hmm.
and you're well liked and no one says anything bad about you, red flag. You're not really telling you how you feel. There's 3 questions that you should ask yourself when you're more on the codependency side. And this is going to be a big 3 questions to help you lose weight, help you be less stressed. And it's huge. If you can't answer these questions with a clear conscience, then you just can't make that decision. So I'm going to try to remember them the best way I can, because sometimes the 3rd one always leaves me at the last second. So the first one is, if I do make this decision, will it produce bitterness in my heart? So, like, if I were to take, let's just go Sam out to breakfast, like just a simple one first.
Mm-hmm.
Second one, if I do take this person out, will it cost too much of me? How is your schedule that day?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have other obligations you need to do that God is calling you to go somewhere else?
That's right.
And the third question is, which I'm surprised it hasn't left me yet, is if I do take this person out to lunch, will I stunt their future growth? Sounds silly, but if you're taking this person out to lunch every single day and paying for their food, you're probably stunting their growth, especially if they're grown.
Mm-hmm.
And so those 3 questions are huge building blocks and a blueprint to help people who don't know how to say no. Because now you're going based off logic and reasoning of why you could potentially not help this person or help this person.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to throw those questions out. Sometimes you just need to help that person because it's an emergency, right? I'm not speaking on those. I'm speaking on daily tasks that keep happening over and over and that are calling you away from some things that God needs to tell you.
That's right.
Like, hey, you need to go this direction and you need to stop doing that. There's a reason why anxiety, depression, and anger come in your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally if you're looking at your dashboard of your car, it's your check engine lights and all these gadgets and oil leaks or whatever. It's flashing at you to let you know, hey, something's wrong with the system.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
That's all it's doing. So I hope that helps. So in closing, what would you say to people who need to lose a significant amount of weight? What are the 3 takeaways you would give them that really bump started you? Obviously we know like boundaries and food
Right.
and all that, but like some of the things that you personally did and you think that are applicable, like you can do right away.
I just had it on my mind what I was going to say too, and it just left me.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, for me, the big thing was, and I know this has probably been some other people too that's happened to. One day I woke up. Now, me and CJ have had many, many conversations about my weight loss, to lose weight. And of course, we would talk and I would cry and be upset. But until you're ready, it will not happen. I woke up one morning and I don't know. I'm sure it was God because I had been praying a lot, didn't know what to do. I was a hot mess, felt like I was dying. And I just was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that day is the day I started. And I started little things at a time so that you don't want to take away all this stuff and starve. That's not what it is. This is a lifetime thing to do. And I didn't even call it a diet.
Yeah, and just a reminder, it took her 1.5 years to lose all this weight.
Yeah.
So do the math.
1.5 years. And I didn't even call it a diet. I just started small things. Like I quit eating those candy bars. That's out. The sugar, I've got to eliminate that. I mean, I felt bad. You get mood swings. You get tired. You bottom out,
Yeah.
And then I would start with something else that I knew, bread. I had to eliminate that for a while. I mean, sometimes I do have bread, but I don't go overboard like I did anymore at all.
Yeah. Well, you're just not as stressed.
No,
Yeah.
no,
So
I
you
don't do
took
that.
out candy bars, and then once you got
Just anything sweet. It was crazy.
once you got the candy bars done, then you attacked bread.
Right,
Like it was a slow process.
Yes.
It wasn't like I'm gonna take out candy bars,
Yes.
bread. You didn't do it all at once.
right. And I know Coke Zero isn't good for you, okay? But I do drink it
She still drinks it, and
Okay,
two is like
but
she's
I
also
do not. I quit drinking regular pop,
yeah.
and so that's my next thing. I kind of need to slow down on that. You know how you just see things that
Yeah.
you need to do,
That's where you're.
but I
at.
do drink a lot more water. When I go out to eat with Craig or friends, and we just went out with CJ, I don't overdo it. Like I can tell when I'm getting full now, and I don't go past that part where you're miserable. That for me, I had to quit doing that
Yeah.
because it was terrible. And then, then I developed GERD from being so overweight. I developed sleep apnea, and that in itself was rough. That's probably how I ended up in the hospital with COVID, because my age, being so overweight, undiagnosed sleep apnea until I got there.
Yeah.
So I think that just
No, that's good because you
Being
got,
consistent,
yeah,
too.
you did food elimination.
Yes.
You know when you're going to be full.
Yes.
And the second thing, you got your sleep
Yes.
fixed.
And like I know good choices when we go out to eat. Do I want to get all this other stuff? Oh yeah, sometimes you do.
And
But
two, just to let people know on the podcast is my mom didn't know what health and unhealthy foods were.
no,
She just didn't.
no.
Most people don't know what those things are. We can't assume those things as coaches.
There was stuff I thought that, oh, this is great for me. It was horrible.
Right. And so, let you guys know too, she's still drinking Coke Zero and she's still not exercising. But this is where she's at and this is the success she's at. So she's only changed some minor things of food and boundaries. And so the next step, I mean, we've talked about it to, because she's been here roughly, in Oxford, Mississippi, roughly for 4 days, 4 days.
Strength training.
Excuse me. And then, so the next thing is going to be her strength training.
And I need it. My body is so weak.
And I want to hit this before we exit on the podcast is she got advice that she needs to go into the pool. And I really want to hit point on this is, and the reason why I say that is if you want to stay sick, stay with healthcare. Right? Abide by those rules. But if you want to get better, you're going to have to take responsibility of your health and stop blaming your family, your circumstance, where you've been through your life, or you would, if you walked in my shoes, like all that stuff, you're going to have to take responsibility. And the reason why I bring up the water thing is water aerobics is, if anybody is interested in that, there's nothing wrong with water aerobics if you have somebody who cannot physically move. Why? Because you're taking gravity away from them. You're making it easier for them to move.
Right.
That is great because this was my mom's questions. Well, maybe I'll just do water aerobics. But my mom can move. She can walk around. She can do all those things. Her next step is not to take gravity away from her body, but to add to it. Right? If you want stress on your bones and your ligaments and your tendons, you need to do some type of resistance training.
Yeah, because it's hard for me to walk a long period of time if I don't have, like the cart or my walker or my cane because of the right hip.
Yeah.
But my body's very weak from all this stuff. I mean, prednisone did a number on me.
Yep.
And not to say that I'm not on RA meds. I am on one, but I'm still losing weight.
Yep.
First time ever. This is my 8th drug. And this is the first time ever I've been able to lose weight on it.
Most people have to realize this too, is just a coaching perspective and just working with clients who are overweight or obese is the reason why majority of doctors give you medicine is because majority of people don't want to change. And so their goal is just to keep you alive.
Oh, yeah.
Whether that's going to hurt you long-term or not, they're reading numbers and they're doing the best they can. They've assumed that you've already tried everything else. That's their job is not to give you a nutrition and exercise program. That is not their job. That's my job. That's your job to take responsibility. That's all of our responsibilities to take care of each other.
They can't get over I'm doing it on my own.
Right.
They cannot believe it because I had one doctor suggest to me, which I told you I was upset about, to get the weight loss surgery. Nothing against that, no judging. I have close friends that have had it. It's worked for them. But for me, I was scared because I had so many other health issues and I was still on high doses of prednisone, and all I could think about was, and other meds with it, all I could think about was I would die on that table because I was in that bad a shape.
Yep. She probably wouldn't make it through the surgery. Yeah.
For me. And remember I told you, I was just like, CJ, I'm scared because I've got so much more issues. I'm scared it'll add my luck. It would add on something else.
Yep.
Now I have good friends, close friends. They've had great success with it.
Yep.
I'm not judging. Whatever works for you works. And whatever's working for me is working. Like I've had some people, like when they've seen me, you should do this and that. No, I'm good because I don't want to get in the habit of eating different special foods for me. And then I want to go back to eat normal food. I've done that and it does not work for me. It does not work for me. So I don't even look at it as a diet. I just do my best to eat healthy, and I educate myself and I read. Of course, I talk to you and, just get as much as I can. And it's working. I mean, like I told you, when I salt a lot, I was like, something is hurting me. What is it? And I figured out it was salt, too much.
I mean,
Too
you
much.
you have to guys realize too, it was a lot of salt.
Yeah.
This
a
wasn't
lot.
like
A lot.
2,000 milligrams.
A lot.
We're talking about a lot here.
A lot of salt. Because when you're on prednisone, which I know some people out there will know because they've been through it, I can't explain it. You cannot get enough sugar. You cannot get enough salt. You're constantly thirsty, and not just for water, for other things. It is the weirdest thing. And then when I got past 7 milligrams, the weirdest thing is all them strange cravings dropped. It is so crazy.
Yeah.
Unreal. Like I told you, I was eating that pizza, remember? And I'm like, I don't even know how I was doing that, eating the pizza all the time. After I got down to like 5 milligrams or something like that, that craving, I don't even want it now. It's weird. It's crazy how that drug works on your mind. And now I know what my dad meant by it.
Yep. Because he warned you about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he would crave all this crazy stuff that he never ate before either.
Yeah.
So my heart goes out to people that are going through it. I mean, it's a hard road, and I'm still fighting my way back.
Yeah.
You know that. And I still got a long ways to go, but I'm not going to give up.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep going because my life depends on it.
You ain't kidding. You got no choice now.
No, because I was knocking on death's door.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes people that, for them to change, they have to require enough pain.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that could be the death to people.
Yeah.
And sometimes that does work. And sometimes it does.
I've had close friends, when I was at my biggest there. They weren't making fun or being rude or you need to go on a diet. No, they were worried about me losing my life.
Yeah.
And the twin said to me, we want you here with us. They weren't meaning that bad. They were truly concerned. When you see your best friend just deteriorating in front of them, it is a concern.
Yeah.
And Jody and Vanessa too. I mean, they've been through stuff, and it's surely eye-opening, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's her childhood friends she grew up with, who she's talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so my next step, my mom's next step is to do resistance training.
Yes.
2 to 3 times a week for roughly about 20 to 40 minutes, I always tell people.
So now I'm researching for up in Illinois.
And so that'll be huge. That'll help her get stronger.
Because
get
my
her hip
body's
better.
weak.
Just because when you're that much pain and you're sitting that much, you become very weak. And
yes,
people sometimes will say, well, if I just get this weight off, then this will feel better. Not necessarily. It might, but majority of the case is just you're too weak anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then
my body's very weak.
Last thing I want to close with this, and this is huge because this is what basically my mom did. If you want to know, and you're listening to podcasts because you're looking to some type of special ingredient to lose weight, there's not one.
Right. And there's some people that are going to be watching this that never knew a lot of this stuff about me.
Yeah. And
I'm okay with that. It's if somebody else if I can help somebody else along the way with going through what I went through with all this stuff and autoimmune, more power to it,
Yeah, you definitely want to spread the information out.
Yes.
And then how you lose weight, I can't stress enough. You don't want to starve yourself, but you do have to eat less calories than you are putting out. I hope I said that right. You have to consume less calories than you're putting out. Yes. All right. And so make sure by her cutting out her, her candy bars and bread made her be in a calorie deficient place to be able to lose weight. And so that's across all boards. You look at
And
keto
fast
diets.
food.
You look at vegan diets. You look at any diet.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. The correlation is the reason why people lose weight is because they have structure and they eat less overall. You will eat less if you have structure. Just part of how it is. That's why diets work. So if you have a specific diet that works better for you, awesome.
Yes.
Do it.
Yes.
But also think about this diet that you're about to do. Can I do this long term? And if you can't, you probably need to change your diet. So I wouldn't even say it's a diet. I would say it's a lifestyle choice of eating,
Exactly.
of how you're going to move forward for the rest of your life,
Yep.
and whatever small changes you need to do. My mom still, like, we went out last night, we ate dinner, and we got ice cream and cookies. Ice cream doesn't really mesh with her well, so she ate some cookies. She can still do that and lose weight that she's losing because she is operating out that 80-20 rules, I call it. 80% of the time you're eating good, 20% of the time you're not. That helps you kind of give you a good structure in that cycle.
I've learned too not to go so overboard,
Yeah.
on things.
Yeah, you have better internal cues and how you do things. But appreciate you guys all listening to the podcast. I hope this helps and helps serve you guys as much as possible. This is just our experience,
Yes.
and we'd love for you to comment or anything that you would want for the next episode and potentially what we could talk about. But we have a couple more coming out that are going to be great, and it's going to be about leadership and boundaries and fitness and how all those things play towards your health and how we're going to move forward. But thanks for coming on, Mom.
You're welcome, son. Love you.
Love you too.